Hey guys, today I'm going to show you just a few easy ways to edit in Photoshop. So first thing you're going to have to do is open up Photoshop. On your desktop it'll probably be in a folder over in this area on your screen called Adobe Master Collection or Adobe Master Suite. So go in there and open up Photoshop CS6. You don't need to worry about the one with CS6 64-bit, just the normal CS6 is great. Once you have Photoshop open, go to File, Open, and browse through your pictures to find the one that you want to edit. I've already got my photo open, so I'm going to skip that part. So open up your picture in Photoshop, please. Now when you open it up, you will have your photo just there to start with. It will just be saved with whatever name you already have it up there. And you'll see over here in our layers panel, this is our layers panel, that it's coming up as background. Now one of the things that I like to do right away, just in case, is to make a background copy layer. So how I did that, I just clicked on this and dragged it down to our new layer button. So when you drag a layer, it just copies it automatically. So now we have a background copy. By having a background copy, that just helps keep our original photo safe in case we really screw it up and accidentally save over our original photo. We still have it there and safe. Nothing should happen to it. Okay, so working with our background copy, this is a picture of the Grand Canal in Venice. So one of the first things I like to do when I have a picture of a landscape or buildings is check and see how straight my lines are on the top, my horizontal ones, and vertically. Now if you're using a wide angle lens, this can be challenging, but we're just going to see in general. So I'm lining up a guide with the top of that building. Looks pretty good. And I'm lining up another guide with the top of that building. It's a little bit off, but it looks alright, considering. So you can zoom in by pressing Control plus, and you can zoom out by pressing Control minus. Alright? If you don't have rulers up here to click and drag guides out of, go into View and get rulers checked. And then if you still don't see guides, go to View again, Show Guides. Or your keyboard shortcut here is Control semicolon. Now you won't see any guides unless you've made guides. So you make guides by clicking your ruler and dragging them out there. So that's good for measuring things and again checking to see how straight things are. This was taken with a wide angle lens which likes to distort edges and kind of make them angled. So considering this one's looking pretty good, I'm just going to leave it. And I'm done with my guides now, so I'm going to hit Control semicolon to get rid of them. Now, one of the first things that I want to do with this picture is get rid of this little boat over here. So I could get into some fancy water editing and just go over it with the clone tool, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to use my crop tool and just crop him out of there. Now with the crop tool, it automatically gives you little corners that you can click and drag from, and it'll give you some nice rule of thirds squares to work with. However, if I wanted to keep the proportions of my pictures the same, I would just have to hold down Shift, and if I hold down Shift, it automatically keeps my proportions the same, meaning that it doesn't like let me make it really skinny like this or really wide and fat like that. If I hold down Shift, it'll keep them basically the same size. So I'm going to drag it like that, but I want to keep some of my sky in there, so I'm going to start dragging from the bottom as well to get rid of that boat. There we go. Maybe I want more sky and less water. So I'm just going to use my arrow keys to move that along. And you're moving the picture in the background, so you'll figure it out. And once I'm happy with where my crop bars are, I'm going to hit plus, or check mark I mean, up in the corner there. And cropping affects both your background copy and your original background layer. So that is one thing to be aware of. Once you've cropped everything. So now would be a good time to go File, Save As. Okay, don't hit Save, because that's going to write over your original. Go to Save As. So I'm in Europe, and I'm going to call this Grand Canal 02. or you can say like edit, or just E for edit. Okay? Make sure you're saving with the layers on. Okay? Not as a copy. Save with your layers on. That means you can go back in and edit your layers later. So hit save. Oh, what is this trying to save as? Oh, no, we're good. Okay, so another thing to watch for, just make sure it's saving as a PSD file. Okay, that's your Photoshop document. So that's what we want it to be saving as. So once I'm done cropping, I can get out of the crop tool. And I think I'm ready to start messing with some things like color and contrast and all that good stuff in this picture. So it was cloudy that day, it's kind of dull, so my colors are kind of dull. But I want to bump those up a little bit. So over here, under adjustment, where it says add an adjustment, these are all our adjustment layers. So this is where we can mess with things a little bit. So first I'm going to add a hue saturation adjustment layer. Now hue is really fun if you want to change the colors of things. So if I want to have blue Venice, I could have blue Venice. So it just adjusts the colors. So it's really good too if your colors are just a little bit off, like if you're taking them in a kind of blue light and want them to look more normal, you can use hue to adjust it that way. Saturation, adjust the brightness of the colors, so you can get pretty extreme with the color adjustments, or you can go to complete grayscale by desaturating the image. If you're kind of in between, you can kind of get this like vintage effect, but I think I want to make mine a little brighter. I want to bump those colors up, make them a little more intense. But be careful with saturation that you don't go overboard. You don't make them too bright. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And again, lightness just makes it darker or brighter. But we're not going to use that. I'm happy with my brightness. Alright, so that looks good to me for our hue and saturation adjustment layer. Now, with this little eyeball on the side here, I can just turn that off and see what it looks like without the saturation. So I can toggle between them, and yeah, I like them a little better. If I wanted to adjust it even more, I could just, whoops. I could just double click on the square, this part of the square, not over here, this part, and I could bump up the saturation even more or take it down if I wanted to. I think I'm going to put it up just a little bit more, and then hit these arrows to put it back in. Now another thing that I want to do, it's pretty common for people to adjust the brightness or contrast in pictures. Those are familiar terms. Now I do not want you to adjust the brightness and contrast. I want you to adjust the levels. So we're going to click on that, and it adds a new levels layer. Now the levels gives you a histogram. So it shows you how many true blacks you have, like the blackest blacks, and how many bright whites you have, the brightest whites. So there aren't a whole lot in this image. Sometimes if a picture is really overexposed, like if the sky is just completely glowing white, you'll have a big spike over here showing that you're blowing out your highlights. Or if it's really dark and there's a lot of like super dark shadows, sometimes there will be a lot of blacks over here. But right now we have an abundance of midtones. That's where our spike in our histogram is. There's a whole lot of midtones. So we're going to work on bringing out some of the highlights and shadows. And you do that by using these little cursors on your levels. So if you watch the picture as I'm dragging this, this is making the colors that are close to white get brighter and turn white. Okay, so you can see in the sky and the water, it's getting brighter and darker as I drag it back. So you can get some really interesting effects with levels, but I just want to go for a more natural effect and just add some contrast. So I'm going to drag mine in about that far. And with my blacks, I want to bring out the blacks in those gondolas and in some of the windows. And that's maybe a bit too much. There. Okay, if I want to undo, I could undo. And again, with the midtones, that just affects the overall lightness or darkness of the picture. And the default for that is 1. So I'll just put that back to normal. And that's looking pretty good. So we're going to put that back in. So now, again, if I turn these off, I can see what my original picture looked like. Then I added more color intensity. Then I added more contrast. So there we go, making it more interesting looking.